Hey friends, welcome to the 360 Experience and today's episode with Brent Hicks. I want to tell you a little bit about Brent in a moment, but I have some exciting news that I want to share with you. You may have heard me mention in previous episodes that there's some coaching that comes after the conversation with me and the guest. Well, we've been compiling a post-mortem coaching library of every one of the interviews and conversations that I've participated in. And on the back end of each of these conversations is about 15 to 20 minutes of very specific pointed coaching that I have for you. So here's the great news. All of the past episodes, postmortem coaching is available to you for free. You simply need to go to the show notes in today's episode and click on the link. It'll take you right there. And all of the future episodes that I'm going to do going forward will always have post-coaching taking place after that. Really happy to be able to bring this additional value to you, and I think it'll be helpful in you taking action. The other thing that I'd like to ask before I get to my introduction of Brent is that you subscribe to the 360 Experience podcast. I'm really looking to take this to the next level for you. And a part of that process is being able to get the subscribership up so I can reach out to some really powerful people that I could have as guests on the show that will bring a tremendous amount of value. So it's super important to me. And it'll be super valuable to you if you would please subscribe and tell everybody else that you're, passing this podcast around to do the same so I can get that subscribership up. Now, Brent Hicks, let's talk about him for a moment, friends. Brent's a good friend of mine at this point. He's been a client of mine for about a decade now. He was a part of Leadership 360 Group 3. And Brent is somebody that I've seen grown tremendously, probably more than any of my clients, I would say, in the sense of his business growth and his personal development growth. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in today's conversation. But Brent is an incredibly talented, educated teacher of mortgages. He is the senior vice president of Cardinal Financial. He has 51 branches that he oversees. He's by far the top divisional president with that company. Brent has funded over $2 billion in loans in his career. And he has a very interesting story, actually, about how he was in the business and he got out of the business and he came back in and remade himself. He brings 25 years of real estate experience to this conversation. And I hope that you enjoy, as much as I do, this conversation with Brent Hicks in the 360 Experience. Do you need more referral partners right now? When I was a $230 million producer, I executed on specific strategies that helped me develop relationships with realtors, accountants, financial planners, and life insurance agents. And I've now put it into a product called the Complete Referral Partner Success System. Gang, these are strategies that my clients are using successfully right now, real time, to give them a competitive edge. And for podcast listeners only, we're knocking $400 off the price. Normally it's $899. For podcast listeners, it's only $499. Use the link in the podcast show notes below or go to www.performance-experts.com to find out more. Once again, www.performance-experts.com. And we hope that you are enjoying this episode of the 360 Experience. Brother Brent, what's happening, man?
What's going on? How are you?
Good. I'm glad we got your lighting situation figured out. You were, it's funny. I was just watching, I just started watching this 5-part series on HBO called Chernobyl with Liz yesterday. And, the whole radiation thing, and your face was kind of giving me flashbacks of the show. It's like, man, he looks like he's had too much exposure to the sun or some radiation. Good to see your face now.
I just got a glow about me. I need to start using this lighting. My teeth look really white. So I kind of like this. I'm going to have to roll with this going forward.
Yeah, you might have to, cut this up into like a romantic video for Stacy, because she'll probably be really attracted to your white teeth.
Look at those pearly whites. You don't have to use your crest strips anymore.
Exactly. Now you're in Dallas right now, right?
I am. Yeah.
So just for the listeners' benefit, you kind of toggle back and forth between two locations. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Stacey and I had a dream for a long time to have a residence in California, a second home in California, and a residence here in Texas. We thought that was probably 5 or 10 years out from when we did it. And, it's interesting how the universe brings things. One of my favorite quotes is Paulo Coelho, and he says, "When you really want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it." And I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in manifestation. Stacey and I use 1111. I even have it tattooed on my wrist here. to remind myself. And we see it daily, and we always manifest our goals and manifest a dream, personal, professional, every day, sometimes 2 times a day when we see it. And that was something we manifested for a long time, was be able to have the second home in California, be able to live in both places. And when COVID hit, it got weird. We got locked in, and I didn't want to be locked in Dallas, Texas. We figured, let's just go to the beach. We rented a house, and 30 days in, I was like, okay, this doesn't need to be a summer rental or a 3-month rental. This is the lifestyle. This is exactly what we wanted. And COVID gave us the cover to do it and the ability to take the leap. And it showed us that we can coexist and occupy and do exactly what we do from anywhere, anywhere in the world, but really from the two locations. It's been amazing. Gives me life, Tim. Every day I wake up, I'm excited. When I'm in California, I look forward to coming to Texas and seeing my family and friends, and I've got something to look forward to. And when we're here, like we are right now, and coming back to California in a couple of days, I'm excited. I can't wait to go to the ocean and get out on my bike and get on the beach. So it does always give us something to really look forward to. And I'm a ocean person, so the ocean, if I can smell it, if I can taste it, if I can see it, I don't care what's going on in the world. It just makes me happy and it soothes my soul.
Well, I don't know if you remember the first time we ever spoke, which was a decade ago, believe it or not. Now, I had asked you like what your dream scenario was for your life, like what you were doing this for, why are you working? I mean, at that time, you were still running Evolve, and I want to get back into a little bit of your history here in a moment. And you were getting back into the mortgage business and remaking yourself as a mortgage professional, which is a fascinating story that I think that we need to discuss for a few moments, because I think you learned a lot from the first go around and parlayed that then into the second go around. But you had said to me, you said, my dream scenario is I'm on a boat with a bunch of friends. We're drinking, I think, either champagne or white wine. I don't remember. We're eating lobster, and where you were then versus where you are now is astonishing. I mean, in the intro that I recorded prior to us jumping into this conversation, I said that, I have a lot of clients that I've known for a long time now, and I'd put you at the top of the list, man, of the person that's had the most growth over the period of time that I've known you. I mean, you've grown so much as a business professional. We're going to get into how that's evolved here in a moment, and even more, I think, bro, as a person, which I definitely want to discuss that in a little bit too. And I love that you already started off with one of your favorite quotes, because I consider you to be a quote king. I mean, you've got a lot of them in your arsenal. I'm going to ask you to bust some of them out here over the course of the next 90 minutes or so. But give us the high level, 50,000 feet. When did you get started in the mortgage business? Why did you get out? What did you do in the interim? Why'd you get back in? And maybe a little bit about like what you learned that made this second go around so much more impactful than the first.
Yeah. 1997, I got in the mortgage business. At the time, I was working 3 jobs. During the day, I was selling copiers for a company called Minolta, working, 8 to 5, selling copiers. I had 2 zip codes in Dallas, Fort Worth. They were more blue collar, region or location. I was selling copiers to repair shops and some small businesses. Was bartending 2 different jobs. So I'd work from 8 to 5, 5 to 10, Monday through Thursday. Friday, I'd work 8 to 5, 5 to 10, and then 10 to 4. Saturday, I'd work 2 bars from 4 to 10, 10 to 4. And there were some patrons coming in one of the restaurants I worked at, and they were in the mortgage business. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but you see somebody that's doing something, you're like, if they're doing it, I can do it too. I knew that I had the tenacity, I had the grit, I had the work ethic. And I realized that the job I had at the time was a very low ceiling. I could only have so much success. I mean, I was limited to 2 zip codes, selling people copiers. No one was ever going to refer me somebody that wanted to buy a copier. It's not an organic or conversation that people would naturally have. Who do you know that, that's leased your copier? And then for them to know someone in their zip code to refer me business, I, I was at my limit of what I could make. I was burning holes in my shoes, banging on doors. Summers here in Texas are brutal. That summer, it was like 100 degrees for 60 some odd days straight. I had my cheap wool suits that I was wearing, the black car at 105 degrees. And like, I need to get out of this dead end job, and I need to find something with residual income. And when I saw the mortgage industry, I thought, okay, this is interesting. It's intriguing because everybody that I would possibly meet has a dream of owning a home generally, and not just one home, right? If it's every 7 years that someone's changing a home or refinancing, it was a boundless amount of opportunity. And I really saw it as anyone that I possibly meet, if I can lend in 50 states, then any relationship I ever have has the ability to give me, endless referrals. And so I sought my way into it. I found someone to hire me. I left the Minolta job and I kept my two jobs bartending. That's what funded me through it. And I have to say, I started off right at the top. I found someone to hire me, and they were doing subprime manufactured housing. They didn't have any FHA license. They had never done a conventional conforming loan. Didn't know what MI was. So I just started banging on manufactured home dealers, getting business. It took me 6 months before I made a single commission, and I grinded it out. The bar jobs funding me through that, and then things started to really take off for me about 6 months into the business, and we really started getting into a good cadence. Back then, I was 97 when I started. I didn't have any mentors. I was a college dropout, or I am a college dropout. I dropped out after my sophomore year in college, drove to Texas. Going to date myself a little bit. I didn't have a cell phone back then. That was in 1994. And I had $300 to my name. And because my parents were super paranoid and conservative, they told me to get a cashier's check. So I went to the bank, got a $300 cashier's check for my life savings, and I loaded up my car and drove to Texas. About 10 miles from my brother's house, I ran out of gas. Didn't have a cell phone, so I had to hike my way to a payphone. Hope my brother was actually at his house at the time when I called him to come find me, and I didn't know where the fuck I was. So it was a really interesting beginning. But I wouldn't change any of it.
So
So
then you grew. I want to make a footnote here real quick for everyone to really take note of is that the work ethic part, right? Like, I mean, that's something that maybe isn't discussed quite enough, but I mean, there are some people that just don't need to have their back put against the wall to rise to the occasion. They just do it naturally. And the fact that you had 3 different jobs, 2 bartending jobs, and then this Minolta thing, I mean, that was a sign early on that you had the work ethic. And, I went through a similar process. I worked in the supermarket business at the same time that I started as a loan originator. And I think there's something important about that too, because when you were doing the double bartending thing and you were starting to do loans for the first time, you could afford to really invest in your growth and your learning and not cut corners and these types of things to really craft that niche that you were going after, which is these manufactured homes, FHA, I think you said. You could afford to stick it out because you had a day job that paid you some money, or in this case, a night job. So when you got to your peak performance in the first go around was like 2005, 2006, right? Give us an example. We'll get into the things that you did in a moment, but I want to go through the timeline real quick. Where did you peak out at and why did you stop?
yeah, in 2006, that was my high water mark, so to speak. That year, it was 176 million in personal production, 95, 98% purchase. Um, my best month back then was 100 and something transactions or loans. But yeah, 176 million one month. It was 32 million in personal production. That was December of 2006.
Wait, time out.
At that
I lost you there for a second. You said 176 million and your best month
year,
was
best
100,
year was 176 and 32 million one month.
32 million in 1 month. Okay, got
Mhm.
it. And how many units approximately was that?
That was about 1,100 units.
Oh, that's just crushing. I mean, 1,100 units, you had to have some systems in place and all of that. So then you have this apex of a year and then you got out. Why'd you get out and when?
So 2000, yeah, 2007, we saw the cracks pretty early on. We were pretty prolific in the Alt-A space at the time. We were probably top 2 or 3 lender in the country doing Alt-A. And I had a builder account that we had won over time. I started doing loans for Pulte in Dallas Fort Worth. My dad used to always tell, kill the queen, the nest dies with it, which means go after the decision maker that actually has influence, and you can accomplish a lot more. And so I realized that I had my toe in the door with this builder, and a lot of our business was builder turn down throughout DFW. Pulte being the size that they were, I started to network my way into the other regionals and other originators that worked from a centralized hub out of Colorado, and started spending time with them, finding out who the decision makers were. Flew out there, met with them. I had a plan at the time. I had a deck, the presentation, and I was reading a book called Chasing Daylight. That book was about a guy named Eugene Kelly. He was the CEO of KPMG at the time. Him and his wife, it's called Chasing Daylight. Him and his wife used to love to chase daylight in the afternoon. So 5 o'clock, he'd get off, pick up his wife, and they'd go chase daylight trying to get in 9 holes or 10 holes, 11 holes of golf. And then all of a sudden, at 50 years old or so, he got diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. At the top of his career pinnacle, he had everything materialistic he could want, had a great life and a great family, and now he's got terminal brain cancer. And what he talked about was how he closed out the loops of his life, and really he broke it down into loops. We've got an outer loop, which are acquaintances, people that we've met, people that we know, but they're not as tight of relationships. Then you've got your, kind of closer circle, and those may be the 20 or 30 relationships that are more meaningful. And then you got your inner loop, and that's the 8 or 10 people that are the most meaningful in your life. And he went and systematically closed those loops of friendships and said goodbye and told people what it meant to him. And reading that book, and I finished it on the plane ride to meet with Pulte, I realized that our value proposition wasn't all these things and products in the deck, it was quality of life. Here they had a mortgage business of which 20, 30% they were turning down. And these loan originators for Pulte were having to spend all their time chasing these OSLs for conditions and what's going on and statuses. And I knew that I could provide them a quality of life. I had the systems and the technology to provide them consistent updates where they weren't going to have to chase us. And that was what was really meaningful for these people that would ultimately send me the referrals. And so we changed our presentation. We pitched it on quality of life. And next thing you know, they were sending us business in California and Arizona and Nevada. And next thing it led to Florida and Colorado and a bunch of states. And so it really grew to be something significant.
So having an entirely different value proposition associated with something that would be purposeful and meaningful for them, that would be heartfelt for them, was a game changer as it related to the way you presented yourself. You represented freedom and a higher quality of life versus the mechanics of your offering, which was a lending product. You positioned it differently, and that changed the way that they perceived you as a person that was bringing value to them.
And there was no monetary gain for them. So I really had to digest what was in it for them. What was their true meaning? What could I do for them that would bring them, significance or quality or an enhancement that would want them to send business to us? So yeah, that was a big epiphany. Not just in that business or in that realm, but in life.
So then this is obviously before you got out of the business, correct? I mean, you left the business in what, 07?
In 09.
In 09, and you went off to do run a company called Evolve, which was a multi-level marketing company associated with like a vitamin product or a vitamin beverage, correct?
Correct. Yep. We started off with a enhanced water product, and that led us into, 14 different products, a bunch of different countries. In 2007, the business changed. We stopped funding loans on our warehouse line because we realized that every loan we funded was potential loss, right? It was contingent liability on every single loan. These loans were getting haircut and scratched and dent like they were going out of style. So we stopped funding loans on the warehouse line. I moved my group to another company, and I didn't do a good job. I wasn't as good of a steward in vetting this next opportunity. We joined. They moved into my office, their corporate office. We co-shared this space that I had. And then 4 months in, they called me on a Sunday, wanted me to come up to the office and talk to them. And they figured out their, CFO had embezzled about $4 million. She really had started double booking loans, and it created this deficit. And so 4 months in, they're filing bankruptcy. My people aren't going to get paid. And it was taxing on me. Like I had made this decision and been the steward of this ship, and I brought us into rocky or turbulent water. After that, I moved my group to another organization that was very safe, that had financial stability and wherewithal. The rates had come back down, and I built the business back up. But the year that I left, which was 2009, I had funded over 100 million myself through June, so I was on track to do a couple of $100 million in personal production. But yeah, Dodd-Frank, you had all this regulation coming in, and I had spent a lot of time building a mortgage practice, but I felt like I didn't have the world-class MBA that I wanted to have in growing a traditional business. At the time, I had a really good friend that had some unbelievable successes. He was one of the people that took Realtor.com public, had another $400 million exit, and we had invested in this technology together. And as we're looking for ways to market it, we landed on network marketing. And I thought that, okay, I can go learn from someone that's had some really big exits, that I could get that world-class MBA and grow a more traditional business. And so I left the mortgage space, started Evolve. That was July of 2009.
Then you came back to the mortgage business when?
2013.
Okay.
I took
And
almost a 5-year sabbatical.
and what brought you back to it? And what did you bring to the mortgage business the second go around that's noteworthy, that you think had a lot to do with where you land today in this moment?
So I realized quickly that maybe I was a little rash in my decision to just get out of the mortgage business. I had spent a long time building this, and we had a good process, good system, good team. And 6 months into it, I was like, okay, well, that was a mistake. I could have kept my mortgage business rolling, and I could have been doing these other endeavors without just burning it to the ground. About 6 months in, the saying, if you love someone, you let them go, and they come back, you've always had them. I kind of felt like that was the mortgage space, and I knew that growing this other business, um, while I may be good at it, I had real passion for the mortgage space, and that distance gave me the ability to really see it for what it was, and realize that that was the thing that I loved more than anything, was being in the mortgage space.
What
But
do you
now
love
at this
about it?
time,
What do you love about it?
I think I love everything above it. I love the energy. I love the dynamics. I love solving problems. I mean, there's always the jigsaw puzzle, the Rubik's Cube that we're doing. It's amazing to help people. It's amazing to help people get financially free, our people that we work with. So I always just enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed the fast-paced nature of it. And there was just endless opportunity in our mortgage space. There always has been, and I think there always will be.
Mm.
Um, Whatever we want, we can accomplish in that space, and use it as a vehicle to do multiple things.
So when you came back in, you started originating loans again, but you quickly shifted, right? You remade yourself to what you are today. So tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was the intentionality behind, I'm going to come back in, I'm going to originate loans, but I'm going to quickly grow it. And where were you then and where are you now? Because it's a pretty astonishing evolution, I must say.
So I spent 4 years whiteboarding it out. I knew that I was going to get back in the mortgage space. I had to get evolved to a place that I could start to pull myself out, because now I had people that I'd made commitments to. People joined our organization based off of things that I committed to them, and so I couldn't just walk away from this business and put people in harm's way. So I spent 5 years really with a whiteboard saying, okay, I don't have any previous structures. I don't have anything that I've agreed to that I'm having to honor. What would I do differently? How would I compensate people? Um, what would be the way that we would engage people? What I realized is I was very transactional the first time around. I was focused on how many units. That was the measuring stick that we measured our success by, was how many units per month, how many units per year. And I had relationships that were toxic. I had zero boundaries. So if it was 10 o'clock on a Sunday, I would answer the phone, and I didn't care if people abused me or my team. I was just in it for the units. And I realized that I didn't create the relationships, though I may have had a big database at the time, and it did a bunch of loans. It was more transactional. And so for that 5 years, I noticed parallels in the direct sales space. And a lot of what I learned there in that business is there was no carrot and stick. It's just a carrot. So how do I inspire people to do things? Um, how do I build disciples out of every relationship that I come across? How do I come from a place of reciprocity? And that was a big mindset shift for me, is to come from a place of genuinely giving. When we started Evolve, I had an idea about creating a Tom Shoes type concept. We shelved that for about 3 years, and then 3 years into Evolve, in one of these epiphany moments, I realized that it was incumbent upon us that we had to give. And I had to do it naturally, and I had to do it in a way that I wasn't adding to my price. I had to be able to give based off of consumption. I wanted to build a social business where people, off just the act of buying or consuming or selling, that they were naturally going to give. And so we launched what we call buy one, nourish one. So for every product we sold, if they were 30 servings, say in a bag of shakes, then we would nourish 30 kids. And so we launched this 501(c), all about nourishing children worldwide, going and trying to attack the global pandemic or global issues of malnourishment. Kids aren't dying from starvation; they're dying from malnourishment. At the time, we happen to have a product that could help eradicate that. And so that's what we did. We launched into it, and that really changed my mindset around giving, coming from a place of generally giving, not looking to receive. And as we transitioned that into the mortgage space, it was all about building reciprocity, investing into our people, investing into future disciples, and spending a long time, and maybe in a multi-year facet on how we could go about building disciples with everyone that we touched. So that
All
was
right.
really that was the cause and what I wanted to accomplish and getting back in the mortgage space.
Yeah. So this term, disciples, I want to go a little deeper with you on that. I think it plays into the concept of reciprocity as well, right? I mean, the two kind of work hand in glove. Um, Tell us a little bit about your philosophies on that. What are some specific things that originators can be doing right now to, embody this spirit of giving, and what can they be giving and offering? What are some important things for them to be thinking about that they need to be doing to enhance their offering? I think back to my conversation with Barry Habib a couple of months ago, where we talked about the subject matter of networking and his philosophy on networking, and how networking is really about trying to understand what the need is of the person that you're networking with, and to give them something that helps fulfill that need with no agenda, no requirement of reciprocity. Just, I'm going to give. And if I give to enough people, and our boy Stevie Grossman has talked about this. I mean, this is definitely something that he's phenomenal at, that the rest will take care of itself. So what are some of the things that you think that originators can be doing right now to create ambassadors and to evoke the law of reciprocity?
I think, look, you got to put yourself in their shoes. Most of the time in our space, it's transactional. We use the word transaction a lot of times, even in our vernacular. So that's something that um, I've been very intentional about. Is I don't want to use the word transaction. I don't even want to use the word client. I want to use the word future disciple, because that's my goal. I'll settle on a raving fan. Spencer Johnson, has the raving fan book, and we probably have all used that term. It's probably overused. In my mind, a raving fan is an acceptable place to be, but discipleship is where we're going. And so, how do I start from the very first impression? That for me is a handwritten thank you card. A lot of people do it. I think it's a lost art still. It starts the relationship. And so my goal is, we take an application, we send a handwritten thank you card out that day, we put a scratch off ticket right in there, let me know how you did. Hopefully that hits their mailbox the next day. And the intention behind that is, if they're going to shop us against multiple lenders, maybe the next day they get that card, they haven't called anybody else, and subconsciously I'll start to build some belief. Maybe that little bit just starts to say, wow, that was pretty thoughtful of them. And I can head off that next phone call, and I can start to move myself down that path. And then along the way, it's always about gifting and giving people things that they're not expecting. A big part of our process is a multi-year, multi-prong approach behind gifting. I don't ask for referrals. I don't, use we love referrals. I don't send tchotchkes. Tchotchkes is something like a title company gives you pens or notebook pads or something that you really wouldn't want. You throw it in the trash can because there's no value, and it's just a marketing. They're just giving this out to everybody. So I send very intentional gifts that feel like they're the only ones that got it. So 4th of July, I'll send them stainless steel grill sets. Memorial Day, I'll send them like Yeti tumblers, wine tumblers, or tumblers for the drinks. I'll write something like, my wife and I, came across these last year, loved them, thought you guys would enjoy it. 4th of July, it's I hope you're gonna get out and enjoy your backyard this summer with your family. This is something my wife and I have used, and we love this. That's all it is. Fourth of Memorial. Let's see. Then it's Thanksgiving. I send them holiday cookbooks. Bluetooth speaker for Christmas, and then every year birthday cards. And so I'll do 5 gifts year one, 3 gifts year two, and then every year after I'll send them something on their birthday. Again, I'm not asking for anything. It's well after the quote unquote transaction happened. They're not expecting anything from us, much less gifts that keep on coming without asking for anything in return.
Yeah, you're catching them by surprise when their guard is down. Starts right away at the beginning when you take the time, because that's the key thing is you've invested the time into writing that handwritten note card. Just a little bit of feedback. I'm not a huge fan, for whatever it's worth, of the scratch off card because it starts to feel a little salesy to me at that point. Like, I think that the words that are in that card are like critically important. If you could personalize it based upon something you learned about the person and the conversation you had with them, so it really feels like this person is reaching out to me and forming a connection with me, I think that's really important. The question that begs, though, is, so you're spending a ton of money on sending out these non-tchotchke items. And I remember us talking about the difference in Nashville. You talked about the difference between tchotchkes and, spending the extra money and giving them something that will be meaningful and that they will keep, because when they keep it, then they are consistently reminded of you all the time. And you don't need to throw your company logo and all that shit on there, because all that does is then put an agenda to the gift saying, hey, I'm trying to sell you on something. It's not about that. It's about giving and trusting that there will be reciprocity. But what do you spend? What's your budget for that, bro? That's like a lot of money that you're talking about.
Yeah,
right?
so a couple of things, and this is another piece of it to me. The energy around it. Expense is a word that I don't want to use because it's an investment. Stacy and I, back a long time ago, we had a plan to be millionaires. And the first millionaires in our family. We were investing at the time. It started off at $3,000 a month, and '99 happened. The stock market crashed. I read The Richest Man in Babylon. I took those principles from investing in myself, investing in others, and I took the money we're investing in stock market and invested it back in my business. That's when my business really started to grow. The more I invested, the more money I ultimately made. It was the byproduct of that investment. And so I don't like the word expense around an investment in my mortgage business, because it is an investment in my long-term business and my clients. It's about $150 per future disciple that we're investing into that relationship per loan that we closed. And then when they come back to us, I start it all over again, and I start gifting to them, a second, a third, a fourth time. I think it's also important, Tim, when this happens and people naturally want to repay the acts of kindness. Maya Angelou, so another quote, people don't remember what we say, they remember how we made them feel. And if you want to ask me what my intention was to come back in the mortgage business, it was about that. How do we make people feel at the end of the day? I didn't want people to have to go look for my name in a stack of cards or look for an email or a piece of mail they got. I wanted to create emotional connection with them. I wanted their reticular activator to go off when they hear the word mortgage or finance or real estate or anything that would trigger to them. And then they edify us in a way that really sets us up as an expert. It sets us up as an authority with their friends or their colleagues or people that, their family members. And when they would call us, there's a different energy because somebody gave us this glowing testimonial about who we were as human beings, as people, and how we recognize as other humans and how we've made them feel along the way. The other pieces of the business are going to be there. They're supposed to be there. We're supposed to close and fund loans on time. That's not something that's an attaboy. That shouldn't get a pat on the back. That's what I'm supposed to do. It's the other things that create connection and create emotion that we really focus in on. And it's a core competency as us. It's a non-negotiable. We are going to do it every single time, and we're going to invest in the longevity of our business.
Yeah, well, you probably remember my interview. I think we listened to it on retreat many years ago now, but my old interview with Dr. Robert Cialdini about reciprocity, and it's fascinating. I'll give a quick 50,000 foot summary for everyone that doesn't know about this, but there's a true law in society called the Law of Reciprocity, and it's based upon a lot of studying and intense research on what transpires when you give something to someone. And basically what the law states is that when someone gives something to you without an agenda and truly from a giving perspective, you feel in your subconscious and maybe even in your consciousness, your awake consciousness, that you need to return the favor and give something of equal or more in return, because that's just how it works. And it transcends societies. It goes into all different kinds of countries. So what I'm really hearing here is that what you're really doing is you're trusting, as I said before, and you're saying, look, I know that I'm going to be fine if I'm a giver. If I give to people and I create this total giving environment with people and keep touching them and act in a thoughtful manner, that the result is that they're going to take care of me, and I won't need to worry so much about taking care of myself and having to work so hard. So a lot of the business that you've built over the years, I would presume, is vis-a-vis past client referrals from this gifting program. Is that accurate? Because you haven't
Yeah.
really had that many agents over the years, have you? Or is
Yeah,
that?
I mean, it started back in 2019 or 2018, or excuse me, 2013, when I got back in the mortgage space. I had burned my database. It had been 5 years since I originated a loan. When I got back in, I had my plan that I was going to execute to. We had all of our, reciprocity campaigns, and like everything that I had done in the past to build my previous mortgage business. I brought on originators. I brought on some people that had worked for me in the past, and then we put in these systems and these processes. That first year, I didn't originate alone, so I was focused on building my group, focused on building my team. But at the end of that year, most of them really didn't adopt to the process and the processes that we had built. And so that year, I was frustrated, and I was still full-time CEO of Evolve, running this other business full-time as well, basically working 2 full-time jobs. And I challenged my team and said, I'm going to originate starting January 1. I'm going to do 100% of what I'm teaching you to do and 100% of what we've built. It will be a non-negotiable in my business, and I'll out originate every one of you guys part-time from zero. And that year, I originated $30 million in personal production. That was from agent relationships. That was going and building new relationships, tapping on some previous relationships that I had, and then really implementing the reciprocity. So we went from 100% agent referral to now maybe 10 or 15% agent referral. We still have a nice stable of relationships of agents, but we've just built this massive database of disciples that, some we've done 7, 8 loans for, we've had 10, 12 referrals from. And I love working with people that have been referred to me, and I love working with my disciples that come back to us.
Yeah, I mean, the job just gets so much easier when you're working with strong referrals. I mean, people don't shop you as much. They don't question the process. They just come in. They're endorsed by your ambassador. My memory was a little foggy there, but now I remember. Weren't you also because when you did the 30 million was, I think, your first year in L360 is my recollection. So like 14 or something like that.
That's right.
And back then you were also doing something I think that I had not heard of or ever thought of that was really interesting. You were going to, I think you were a part of a realtor mastermind, and you were going to realtor events. Tell us a little bit about that. That was happening too, right?
Obviously, I mean, L360, it is all about masterminding, and you have mastered that ability to take so many talented people and bring them together and really get the best out of everybody and get people to share those things that they do and that work for them. I had created a mastermind group in 2005. Some of the L360 people that are in our group were part of that initial mastermind. When I got back in the space, I was trying to build authority, and I'd been a successful entrepreneur, built somewhat of a reputation in our marketplace, and I was leveraging that. So I became part of a mastermind group that was meeting 4 times a year, all real estate agents, and we would go and we'd bring value. And out of bringing value and being authority, it led us to relationships. It led us to other people introducing this to people in our marketplace. And that was how I started to build my agent referral, was from a place of authority and a place of giving. What can I do for them? What can we impart in them? And what are we doing that's working? What have we learned that they can apply back into their business? And then I took all the ideas that I was learning from these agents across the United States. And when I would meet with a local agent and someone that we were trying to get business from, now I had this repertoire of information. Here is what is actually working. Here are what agents that are doing 700, 800 transactions a year are doing. Here's exactly what their footprint looks like. Here's what their blueprint looks like. Here's where they're investing their marketing dollars. Here's how they're their MSA or their ISA program on following up with leads. Here's what they're spending on that. So we were just bringing all this wealth of information back to these agent partners that could then implement that or swipe and adopt the information that we had brought to them.
So I want to check in and make sure that I'm following you on this. So you formed a masterminding group of agents from different parts of the country that were superstar producers. And then you were taking what you learned from those conversations and bringing them back to your local real estate agents that you were trying to cultivate a relationship with. How did you locate the agents in different parts of the country and form that masterminding group? Like, how did you source them? What was the approach? I'd be curious about that.
I found a group that was a coaching group that had brought together a bunch of agents. This was their, first year and their first meeting. So I was part of that, inaugural meeting with, I think there was 15 agents. They grew up to about 50 or 60 agents, and they were meeting multiple times a year. And I was part of that process, part of bringing them value and business acumen and investing. And from that, I learned a lot from them. And I would take copious notes. I would get their decks and their PowerPoints of what they were presenting. And then I would take that information and bring it back to the people in my marketplace.
Yeah, I never did this, but I did have a really meaningful relationship with a couple of different superstar producing real estate agents, Terry Morler being one of them, who, spoke at some of my events, back in the Loan Toolbox days. And I would always thought after that, like over maybe say 10 years ago, I was thinking, gosh, if I was getting back in the business right now, one of the things that I would be doing is I would be going to the big realtor events. Like, I think that would be worth a lot. Being an attendee, taking notes, talking to the presenters off stage afterwards, exchanging information with them. So I have maybe a connection with them, and then taking those notes and that wisdom that you call authority, building authority, which I want to go deeper on that in a second, and teaching it to the local agents in your area, forming your own masterminding group in your area, which I did for many years. But I got my information from Todd Duncan seminars, and I just found the content that would be applicable to those other vocations. But in this case, I mean, you're just going to walk away with like all of the material that you need to have an incredibly successful, maybe one full year, monthly masterminding meeting with a bunch of real estate agents where you just bring a ton of value because you're a resource to them on valuable content. I think that would work. I think it would work to this day. I think everybody that's listening that should run out and do that. I mean, tell us more
Yeah,
about
but if you think
authority.
about it too, most of the time we're out presenting, our process, our team, our products. We've got some niche product that we're trying to engage them with, anything to open the door. What I was doing was trying to bring them value in how to build a team, and had credibility and very specific knowledge. Like, I wanted to learn how to be one of the top agents in the country. That level of specificity, that I knew every facet of how these top agents were performing and building their team, what their hiring practices were, and bringing that in. And that's what I would use as the Trojan horse, so to speak, to open the door. What's in it for me is what they're always asking. And that was what I was articulating. And it allowed me to go after the queen, you know, get the people that had influence. And so I spent my time going after the top agents in my market, not someone that was doing 2 buyers per year or had 5 listings that weren't generating buyer leads. It was focused solely on people that were doing 30, 40, 50, 100 plus transactions a year on the buy side. And then I had something that was different of value to them. And we would help them to implement these things into their business. We'd bring them the specific knowledge, share with them the decks and information, and then show them a process on how to implement it into their current practice. And then I could connect them with other high producing agents in and out of their market that they could then mastermind and share with and sharpen one another.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks, going back to the beginning of the conversation. I mean, this is something that is just symbolic of who you naturally are, I think, to some great degree, and who you've aspired to be, which is somebody who is going to work 2 bar jobs and sell copiers at the same time and figure it out. Like, you're going to go the extra mile and go to masterminding groups with real estate agents to learn and become an ambassador of things that your agents that you're pursuing need to know. And that's out of the box thinking. It's it's creative, it's ambitious, but most importantly, it's embodying that mantra that you have, that I'm here to give and to help people with no agenda, because that's all you were doing in this scenario. You weren't attaching some kind of an expected result to it, and you gave and gave and gave. And I'm sure that along the way, you probably met plenty takers, people who would just take but not give in return, right? I
Of
mean,
course.
what'd you do with those folks? Did
But
you
it's the
ever
law of
get pissed off?
averages. Not really, because it's the law of averages. I know the more people that I would meet, the more people that I could get in front of, the better chance I had of success. I just continue to go out there, continue to build my speech or craft and hone in my craft of what I was presenting, and how to continue to, really become an authority in everything that we were doing. And it was looking at the business multiple years out. I didn't care about instant gratification. It wasn't about, what can I do to get one loan tomorrow? It's about what I could do in the business principles that would give me the foundation and give me the long-term sustainability and allow me to get to where I wanted to be. Early on in my mortgage career, Tim, look, I learned a lot from you in my first round well, I've learned a lot from you in this round, definitely. But I went to one of your events, and that was one of the things that changed my life. I mean, I left there so inspired. We went back and retooled the business and allowed us to really grow. And I found the first time around, I had never been to the top of the mountain. So every time I would get to a pinnacle, and it wasn't the pinnacle, right? It was a false pinnacle. And then I'd have to retool my business because the law of the lid was me. And I could get to 30 loans. And then I had to retool the business. And then I get to 50 loans and I have to retool the business. This time around, I had learned what was at the top of the mountain. I knew how to get there. And I had to just really focus on the long-term business that I wanted to become, not the business that I needed that I was today, to transcend and rebuild and rebuild. I started acting as if I was that person in that company, from the very onset of this new jaunt in the mortgage space.
The law of the lid was you. Tell us more about that. Like, what did you uncover? I'm presuming that what that statement means is that you realized you were getting in your own way, maybe your limitations and your beliefs around what was possible or what you should be doing were uncovered. But there's so many people that don't even recognize they're at the lid. And so tell us a little bit about what you uncovered and how you realized that this needs to be a constant reevaluation of the next level of potentiality for you.
So I think initially, I built my first business under a scarcity model. I was afraid that I was going to teach somebody the secret sauce and then they would go out and use it against me. And over time, I started to come from a place of abundance. And that was the giving piece. And so, as I was building the business the first time, all the information was in my head. I was very controlling. I wanted everything to go through me. I wanted to be able to keep my people, in check and to build this culture. But the culture was me. I was the business. And so I didn't have a business. I had a job, and I had a very high stressful job that didn't allow me to take vacation. I mean, when I got married, Tim, my wife and I went to Vegas. We spent the weekend and I came home. For the first 15 years of our marriage, we never went on a 7-day vacation. It was a 3-day weekend at best. And I was on my phone the whole time. And it was because I built all these walls up around me. And I built these walls to maybe make me feel important, to make it seem like it was me and I had to be the one to be the savior. All those things were just the lid on my business. I was the proverbial lid. And so this time around, I wanted to build it from a place of abundance, knowing that I needed to empower my team, empower my people, build processes that would allow me to get out of the business, not, work in it. I can work on it. I could be at 30,000 feet. I could go out there and rainmake and do the things that I really love to do and not spend all my time doing the technician work.
And I didn't know this part of your story at all. And, the cool thing is that, I mean, you're living a very different life now. I mean, you may fucking travel more than I do, and I travel a lot. I mean, you guys are living a great life, you and Stace. I mean, you guys are out there. I mean, you practically have, third residency in Cabo, best I could figure out based upon every time I talk to you. I mean, that's incredible.
I'm going back tomorrow.
Perfect. So have a great time and drink some good margaritas. The thing is that what I was hearing in the back of my head while I was listening was the listener who's saying, yeah, but if I come from this trusting place of abundance where I can just let go, people will take advantage of me. People will burn me. People are advantageous. Things like that, because people have had that happen to them in the past. I'm sure you've had it happen to you. I've had it happen to me. But how do you work with that? Like, because it had to have taken, a fairly big leap of faith to some extent for you to make that transition from coming from the scarcity mindset of I got to control everything and therefore I'm tethered to my business in such an extreme way to I'm just going to give and come from abundance and trust my people and create freedom for myself. How did you make the transition?
Part of it was mindset. A lot of it was mindset. You helped me with a lot of that upper limits, limiting beliefs. That's something you're definitely a master and an expert. So a lot of that was unpacking why I was coming from the place I was coming from, recognizing and seeing those things, and then getting at peace with if I helped foster someone in the mortgage business and they went on to go off on their own, and if they outperform me, that's great. I helped somebody and I helped them. I don't own anybody. And so I just have to come from a place of giving, helping people, and bringing value every single day. And if they go on to do something else, God bless them. Like, that's just part of life. So instead of being so worried about it, I feel like people gravitated towards giving them the freedom. We were obsessive. I'll say I've been obsessive about the business. I'm obsessive about the details. And this time around, we built it as a coaching process where I wanted my team to understand why we did the things that we did. And if they did send an email or the way they responded or the communication style was different, I wanted to build it where it was open and real conversation and dialogue. We weren't going to walk around on eggshells. We would be able to discuss things, but be able to discuss it in a way on why we do the things that we do from a long-term macro perspective. And then they really started to level up and become true partners of mine within the business that could manage it. And when somebody comes into our business now and we get a referral, my referral partners are totally content with working with my partners. And that was even down to the vernacular of not calling them an LOA, calling them a partner. People don't want to do business with our subordinates, but they will do business with our equals. And now that they're, ninjas in what they do, like they represent our brand so well. Um, I can do the things that I really want to be able to do in the business.
What would it be like to spend an entire year with 3 coaches, including myself, and 11 top producing originators from around the country, to go on an 8-day business and life planning retreat in Costa Rica and to spend 4 days at my home in Southern California with a lot of coaching in between? The Leadership 360 Signature Program, our hallmark program that we've been doing for 10 years now, is now accepting applications for Group 11. We only take 12 people a year. This is the only private one-on-one coaching that I do at this point. Go to www.leadership360now.com or go to the show notes and click on the link and apply, and we'll get together, we'll set up an interview, and we'll start to have a conversation. Now, back to the show. Yeah, one of the things that that I've thought a lot about, but I don't know that I've really talked to too many people about it in this way. It's more in the way of me getting asked the question about like, well, hey, didn't you ever have, people on your team when you were traveling 8 weeks out of the year as a $200 million producer? Didn't you have them slack off or take advantage of you or, not fulfill their commitments in a way that you would have expected? And my answer was always the truth, which was no, I never had that experience. And then when I look at the team that I have right now, I mean, Scott and Julie and Andrea and Sarah and Doreen, I mean, it's like, they're incredible. Like I've been trying to pinpoint it. Like, is it the hiring process? And I would think not, because man, I'm a shitty hirer, dude. Like I'm not good in that area. I mean,
You're a world-class communicator.
I can teach the principles of it, but I sure as shit am not patient enough to like sit there and do a really proper, thorough interview and really vet, right? And I've thought, oh, is it my intuition? And I'm like, I don't think it's actually any of that. I mean, I think that a part of it is just people are naturally good. Like, I really fundamentally believe that, yeah, there's some bad apples out there. I mean, it's the same thing with L360. I mean, so many people have said to me over the years, like RG said to me one time, he's like, dude, where did you get all these great people? Like, this is amazing, this group. It's incredible. He's like, your vetting process is extraordinary. And I'm like, it's not about that, man. Like we can only accomplish so much in 3 1-hour Zoom interviews with somebody. I feel like it's about the container. I feel like it's about showing up with our hearts open. So like, I mean, Scott and Julie and I definitely bring our heart to the equation. And I think people just naturally meet you there. And I think the same is true in an organization. Yeah, you will have some dissenters. Yeah, you will have some people who have a bunch of shit, you know, in their bag of baggage that just makes them fundamentally not cooperative or not a hard worker or advantageous or whatever. But I think it's actually very much not the norm. I think the norm is that if you show people that you care and you really bring that giving heart to them, they're going to meet you there and show up as their best self. And why? Because they can. You see, the thing is that the only reason that we armor our hearts and shield our hearts and come from a place of selfishness is because we feel like we have to, because it's being displayed around us that to survive, we have to think of ourselves. But what if you create an environment to where I don't feel like I need to survive? I could feel like I could just let my guard down and trust. And I mean, we experienced that in L360. And I think that I experienced that in the organizations that I've run. And it sounds like you very much are creating this type of an energy and experience. And you're finding the same reciprocity with your people now that you do with your clients. Do you want to speak to that any further and give us
And it goes back to people don't care what we say, they care how we made them feel. And what I've seen you do, Tim, is you're a master at communication. You're a great process person. You know, the level of specificity in which you put into things, it lets people know where they stand and they know where your heart is. They know that you're coming from a place of abundance and there's nothing greedy about anything that you're doing. You're casting of good vision constantly, and then you course correct and you built an environment where it's okay to correct or have conversations, but you do it in a safe place where you listen to people and know what they really want, and you're trying to help them accomplish it. It's not about you, it's about us. I've watched you do it. You're masterful at it, and I've been fortunate to learn some of it from you and try to reapply that into my life and my business.
I appreciate that reflection. I will take it in. My immediate, when I hear you say it, I kind of cringe inside because I think of all the times that I was aggro, where I was just like impatient and perfectionistic, and somebody on my team didn't do something in a way that I would have wanted it to be done. And then my tone of voice is not cool. And I'm human. And I guess that I'm still a work in progress like anybody else. And as you say that, I go, yeah, I think actually a lot of times I do put forth a very strong effort. It doesn't come naturally or easy to me, but I do have that strong intention to, you know, give people grace. And I think, you know, the other thing, bro, is that like leadership, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And now you're such a prolific leader. I mean, my goodness, how many people work for you, by the way?
It's about 700.
Shit, man. I mean, that's a lot of people. We're going to need to talk about that in a second because leadership is definitely a topic that I think you bring a lot to the equation. Um, I've been thinking about leadership a lot lately, and I've been thinking about what it really means or what are some of the qualities and characteristics. And, you know, I think that way high on the list, I mean, yes, there's all these very standard things that I've absolutely subscribed to, which is like, you got to be willing to bring your A game if you want the A game from your team, and, you know, do what you say you're going to do, and, you know, integrity and trust and protect them. And all of those things are super important. But I think one of the things that gets missed, bro, is that what about like being the one who's brave enough to tell the truth in the toughest times about where things stand? You know, this has been a period of time here in the last year and a half in the mortgage business where, let's be honest about it, you know, like we're all the best version of ourselves when we've got money, you know, raining from the sky. You know, I mean, it's a lot easier to be a nice person, but man, when things get tough, and we get into our fear and we constrict and have to think about our own self-preservation, it can be very tricky to be a clear and honest communicator, because you get thrown into this position where you're worried a little bit, or can be worried about, like, if I tell them the truth, they're going to panic. If they panic, they may start looking. I don't want them to feel like I don't have my shit together. Like, I think that there's this very fine line between, like, giving your team the honest truth as to what you're up against, and then also simultaneously rallying them to forge ahead with you. So it's an area where I've been thinking a lot about it. I've been thinking, like, it's something that I've actually done really well over the years. Like, back to when I was an originator, then with Loan Toolbox, now with Performance Experts. I mean, recently, like, we have concerns about, like, our client's financial situation and how that impacts us. So, like, the very first thing that I did when I started having these concerns, I had a team meeting and I told them the truth. And I said, but it's like, here's the reality, and here's what I'm concerned about, and here's what we need to do as a team to get through this together. It's like, you present the challenge with the solution and with clarity, and then embody that mission that you've just put forth, like leading with that purpose-driven agenda that you just articulated to them, so they can say, oh, I heard him clearly, or her clearly, depending upon who you are, and I see the path, and man, he's already running down that path. I'm going to run with him because I'm inspired to run with him because I trust and believe him. Versus, they know if you're hiding it, if you're not being real with them, and then they start to question your integrity. And so, like, how have you led, and feel free to comment on that, but, like,
Yeah. I
how
mean,
have
look,
you
first
led
of all, I
on?
think if, principle is, if I've got to question anything, I must question everything. And I think people go through that. And I don't ever want to insult someone's intelligence. Like, we are hiring great, capable, talented people. All of us have the ability to endure a lot. And so to tiptoe or hide things from people, I don't think is fair. They need to know where the ball, where the ball lies at all times, because they have to make decisions for their families, and they have financial commitments and people that they are responsible for. And all that goes back to trust, right? If we're doing the right thing, always, we're putting people before we put ourselves, then what do I have to hide, right? I'd rather them know what it is that we're contending with, what it is that we see around the corner, what it is that's coming, that we think is coming, and then let them adapt, let them be able to respond. And yeah, we've got to be able to lead the charge. Generally organizations run at 80% of the leaders, speed of the leader, speed of the organization. And so I think it's critical, especially in times not like this. They see us out leading the charge. We're the first ones in, the last ones out. We're highly accessible, and we're constantly coaching them. And we're fortunate that we've been through this before. We know how the tape is going to end. We know how the video is going to end. It's a season right now. We just have to get people prepared that it's been a harsh winter, and layer up, put on a couple extra jackets. But on the other side of winter is spring, and there's going to be planting, and there's going to be harvesting. If you want to look to the future, always look to the past. And the past is a predictor of our future. All these cycles have happened before, and they'll happen again. Um, I, I think that's the only way we can be, is completely transparent and open and real with people.
So during this time, as a leader of 700 people, and I'm sure that number was even higher because you had to go through some layoffs and cuts, which I'm sure wasn't easy at all. Um, what is the message that you're giving to your people right now about the things that they need to be doing and disciplining themselves to execute on, to plant those seeds that will germinate in the spring when it comes?
A lot of it's mindset. A lot of it's trying to get people to take massive action, um, act as if your back's up against the wall, do the things that made you successful. One of the things that Tony Robbins says that I love is, find someone that has what you want, do exactly as they do, you'll get the same result. Modify it, and you'll get a modified result. So if it was you, if you were the person that had the success 2 years ago, 5 years ago, if you do what you did, you'll get the same result. If you do it differently and you take less action or modify the action, you're going to get a modified result. So I'm trying to inspire them, show them what's working in the marketplace, get them to go take massive action, all while being a steward of their business, being a fiduciary, work through the hard things, make the hard decisions, because we got to keep ourselves in the game. We have to survive. We're gonna survive. We're gonna endure, and there's so much opportunity. I mean, things like 40% of the loan originators got out of the mortgage business this year, did not renew their license. So Stratmore came out and said there were 100,000 licensed originators in 2021. That was up from 80,000 in like 2019. Those are licensed originators that I think did 6 purchases or loans per year. So the real the real number of active loan originators, that's gone down to 60,000 people. 40,000 did not renew their license this year in that cohort that they were looking at. To me, that's also inspiring, right? There's just so much more opportunity for us if we're out there knocking on doors and open up doors and wake up in the morning excited about what's possible instead of having the worry shut us down and the stress shut us down, and then we not take the action. And then it becomes self-fulfilling. You take less action, you get less reward, you get less reward, you take less action. So we've just got to change that around and be focused on 3, 6, 9, 10 months, 12 months down the road in what this activity is going to bring us, and believe in it, because if you do it, it will come true.
So when you started to build things, back in 14, 15, right in there, I mean, that's not that long ago. We're talking, when did you actually start like recruiting? Like when did you make the decision, like, I'm going to build a division, a region of the country for Cardinal and really grow this thing? And that must have been a shift in business philosophy as well, but I'm sure a lot of the same principles apply.
Yeah, it was 2018 when I joined Cardinal. Um, I felt that everything in life's a teacher or tormentor. That's a life principle of mine. You can let things torment you, or you can let things teach you. Over the past 10 years, building my previous mortgage practice, I had a lot of life lessons. I bought a lot of t-shirts that I hung in my closet that I owned the lesson, and a lot that I could teach and help other people to accomplish based off of that experience. In 2018, I decided to join Cardinal and take on the opportunity to be able to grow a division and bring other people in and take and shift, as you like to talk about, Maslow's law of hierarchy, and be able to focus
Hierarchy
a
of
bit more
needs.
on hierarchy of needs, and be able to
Yep.
focus more on legacy, right? Be able to focus more on being able to build something that wasn't about my personal production and give back to to other people within our community. It took me to 2019, so the first year we had just launched our technology called Octane. It took some time to get it configured and get it where it was functioning for retail. And so I spent about 6 months focusing on getting that dialed in to really operate the way we needed it to. And then after that, I focused in on growing our division and bringing people in. So we went from about $40 million a month in 2018, started recruiting in 2019, and in 2021 we did 4.2 billion. Last year, with the decline, it was about 3 billion in production from our division.
Incredible numbers, bro. Octane's like your guys' secret weapon too, isn't it?
It is. It's our blue ocean strategy for sure.
Yeah, you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. I mean, it's a LOS, loan operating system, kind of cradle to grave, built with automation, AI, process. It just does a lot of things that we had to do as human beings, and a lot of the old thoughts of the mortgage space and how we manufacture things. I'll use an analogy: mother and daughter cooking Christmas, ham, and the mom is cutting the ham bone. So the daughter asked the mom, "Why are you cutting the ham bone?" She said, "Well, this is the way we cook, holiday ham." Okay, but why are we doing this way? I don't know. This is the way I've always done it. Okay, but why? She said, "Well, your grandmother taught me how to do it, how to cook holiday or Christmas ham. Why don't you call your grandmother?" And she called her grandmother, and her grandmother said, "Well, when I was your age, our oven was only like 14 inches wide. And so we had to cut the ham bone to get the ham in the oven." So now generationally, they've been cooking this ham this specific way because they thought that's the way it was supposed to be done. But it was only by the confines or limitation of the oven back then. And I think that the mortgage space is that same way. A lot of times we're in an operating system that was built with 30 or 40-year-old methodology or thought process, and we're limited to that. So we built this loan operating system that is highly automated, very sophisticated, and I can operate with about a third of the staff that I would normally need in an Encompass-based system. That allows me to bring my manufacturing costs down, which allows me to have more margin to be able to put into concessions, rate, LO comp, and we're maniacally focused on it. We have been for a long time. We don't think that rate compression is going to go away, and most people are going to be stuck with a fixed cost of manufacturing that's prohibitive for them to be profitable. The more that we can focus in on shaving dollars and pennies out of the process, the lower we can reduce that manufacturing cost, and the more profitable our groups, our originators, or the more competitive they'll be in the marketplace, because they don't have to layer on all that extra fat or expenditure on top of their margins.
Well, and if they want to lay on some of that extra fat and expenditure for purposes that you described earlier, to create massive separation from the competition because you're super high touch and super connected with people and giving to them in different ways, you have a little bit of the money to invest, to use your term, to do that in the long-term growth of your business. But if your margins are super fat, then you're going to have to cut costs in other areas. And the area that you don't want to be cutting costs is in these areas of cultivating relationships and building deep, long-term disciples. GPT, you played around with that yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Bro, it's crazy, man. What have you,
Mind-blowing.
what are some of the things that you've done? I'll share with you a couple of things that I've done, but like, tell me what you're doing with it. Let's riff here a little bit on how this could change the mortgage industry.
I mean, I've definitely used it for marketing letters, templates, email templates. I'm having my groups, that don't have email templates in Outlook or Gmail, just go in there and have that thing transcribe it for you, and build a really phenomenal email template for every possible scenario that comes in. We built a bunch of marketing letters that we're about to enact. I mean, I've had it do like a general contract, something that I was doing between me and somebody else, and instead of engaging an attorney to do it, I got ChatGPT to do it for me. On the mortgage side in Octane, we're having it review our code, and it's like debugging 90% of the errors in the code on the front end before our engineers catch it.
Yeah, Trey was telling me that my son Trey, who was telling me that he actually had it write code for a website that he was designing, and it did the whole thing for him.
Yeah, they said that right now it has the ability to write code for a Google programmer, level 1 programmer at Google that they would engage right now or hire right now, and it'll write Python code. I mean, it's impressive. We're just scratching the surface.
Oh yeah. As you said that about the email templates, I was thinking, well, geez, this is great for those that want to implement the perfect loan process, right? Like, I mean, that's like one of the questions that I get from people all the time is they go through the PLP, they want to adopt it with their team. And they're like, hey, do you have the email templates to send out? Do you have, the pre-approval letters that I should send out, or all these different types of documents? I mean, it is incredible how well it writes things. I mean, I could type in there like, well, actually, I did do this the other day, but I didn't do it with your name. I was just showing Liz, but I said, draft a invitation to for a guest on the 360 Experience podcast that I host. And bro, it wrote this like incredible email that was like perfect. All I need to do is insert your name, and it was like professionally written. It was like boom. Or like I've been brushing up on my Italian because I'm going to Italy this summer, and I've been like, there's a couple of verbs that I didn't know, and I just typed in, conjugate this verb in Italian, just right there in front of me. I'm like, shit, man, like this is like lightning fast. It's like, I could see why some of the people that are investors in Google are a little bit worried, right? Because I could see where this could easily replace Google's search engine functionality if they don't get their act together with Bard really quickly.
Yeah, I think 80% of the revenue comes from Google AdWords. So if you take out all the banner ads and you start giving factual information based off of someone's search instead of who's paying the highest ad, yeah, that gives you a more concise answer, and it's not filtered down by monetary gain by Google or search engine. I mean, this will change us completely. And I think when we look back in 3 or 4 years, this is like the internet. I mean, in the early 90s, people thought the internet was a fad. And now look at how far we've come. Technology is advancing at like every 18 months, it doubles. Imagine when this technology that's just been launched and now hundreds of millions of people are utilizing what they're gathering, and the AI that's learning now at a speed and a clip that, it just got launched to the world in 18 months, where this technology is going to be, or other technologies that come off of this are going to be. I don't know that we'll recognize our lives in 3 to 4 years. People that use virtual assistants. I mean, all these things that we've utilized, we don't have to utilize anymore. It's at our fingertips, and it could do it faster than I could hand it off to somebody else to have it done.
Yeah, have you seen there's the other version that it starts with a D, and basically, like, you could say, I could say, draw a picture of, LeBron James riding a horse with no shirt on. I don't know where I came up with that just now, right? And a white horse, okay? And all of a sudden you get this picture that is exactly that. Like, it draws it for you
Wow.
in seconds, man. It's crazy. It's a little scary too, don't you think? There's a lot of bad that could happen from this too. I mean, people could use it for poor purposes. Have you thought about that?
I haven't spent a lot of time on somebody being nefarious. Yes, people nefarious can always find ways to do things to harm us or to create harm. I'm more focusing on the good that'll come out of it. And I think the more that, our kids and people start to learn and adapt and embrace this technology, just what a gift to humanity this possibly can be or could be. The good that can come out of it. I mean, I had some friends that were going through cancer and things that I just didn't have a lot of knowledge about, and I was using Chat GPT to do like crazy research for me, um, on the diseases themselves, clinics, physicians, people that were experts. Like, I was trying to help attack, if my wife was diagnosed with something, how would I go about it? How would I be super aggressive in trying to find out treatments and other things that were in other countries? And I used Chat GPT to try to arm myself or equip myself with as much information I could, and it was an amazing resource.
Yeah, I mean, you could type in stuff in there about, like, help me design a marketing strategy to go after or to pursue real estate agents, and then just see what that gives you. I mean, it's crazy smart. Like, it's it's wicked, man. It's really bizarre. Pivoting for a second, like, another thing too that I know about you from our friendship is that when you were, building your success as a leader and building uh, your your passive income, that essentially, maybe it's not so passive because you work your rear end off, but when you're building your steady income stream as a result of having, these 700 employees and manufacturing a lot of loans, $3 billion last year, you also have wisely deployed that wealth into other streams of income that kind of diversify you and protect you and set you up, I think, from, and I haven't done as good of a job of this as you, so I'm super curious to learn from you right now. What are some of the things that you would recommend that people be thinking about doing in terms of where they distribute their wealth to create passive income?
So in 2007, everything in life's a teacher or tormentor. I had to take 100% ownership of my finances at the time, right? And it was stressful because I didn't have any passive income. It was all related to the mortgage space. And so when we had that downturn, it messed with me mentally, and it just created all this stress because I watched my income go down so much. And though we had good savings, it was still the mental game that I was dealing with, and I was worried, as the knife continued to fall, where it was going to ultimately land. And after 2007, that was something that I wanted to change, and that was bound to change. That I was going to take the income I was bringing in, start to invest it in passive ways to generate revenue. And when this market came back, what the market that we're in right now, I wouldn't have to worry about my mortgage income because I would have enough passive income coming in that Stacy and I could sustain our lifestyle without making a single dollar in the mortgage space. And so it was almost like, bring it on, because we know that we can grow in times like this because we're willing to still invest into what we believe and what we know is right and what we know will ultimately bring us business. I invest in real estate, commercial, multifamily. I invest in things that pay me current. I like things that pay current, that pay dividends, that pay yield, whether it's monthly or quarterly. I like things that are backed by assets, something that's tangible. But I really am focused in on something that's a 8 to 10 to 12% kind of annual pay current model that gives me tremendous cash flow. When money comes in every single month, it goes, into our main checking account, and then I move it into sub accounts that day. And each one of those accounts are intended into going into various investment vehicles. Some go directly into the stock market, of which we'll invest in our mutual funds, IRAs, do a lot of low cost index funds. That money is long term. I'm never going to touch it. And then I move money into a vehicle that will go into a real estate investment. I mean, I've even got, quite a bit into a fund that does hard money loans. And that's about a 10% pref annually, 8% paid current,
You're
kind
just
of
an
on a monthly
investor in
basis.
that. You're not reviewing the
I,
files.
I don't, and I don't want to do what I learned, Tim, is I used to be involved in like 15 different things. You know this. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
when we
I
first
remember
met, like I
Washington
decided I
D.C.
want to build
Washington
houses,
D.C.
and
Yeah, yeah.
instead of building one spec house, I built 8, and that became a source of pain, and it was taking me away from my genius zone. And so I had evolve. I had 8 spec houses that I built. We had these other little ancillary businesses that were creating cash flow, but really it was creating stress. And I was just spreading myself too thin. I was taking on more than what I could actually do, and it wasn't giving me the experience that I wanted. And so I made a shift after those spec houses to invest in things that I could do passively, find good operators, find people that I could trust, people that had good accounting practices, had a very good track record, and assets that were, semi protected or as protected as you possibly could. And yeah, that's what I do. I've become a passive investor in everything now. I don't want to operate anything. I want my main thing to be my main thing. That is the mortgage space. 100% of my time, my energy, my effort, um, mental wherewithal, I want to spend in this space.
Where do you find these investment opportunities?
Um, Friends, investment groups. I'll attend other seminars. So if it's real estate, I may attend real estate seminars that I could learn more about multifamily or commercial. Josh Metal is somebody that's in our group. Man, he was prolific in teaching me about cost segregation. He talked about it a couple of years ago, and that's been life changing. Understanding something I didn't know about cost segregation and how cost segregation or bonus depreciation could benefit us.
Yeah, explain more about that.
It's essentially properties that commercial real estate. I think you depreciate over like 32 and a half years. Residential, maybe 27 and a half years. That's the normal depreciation cycle. When you're buying investment properties, whether it's commercial or multifamily, there are assets, there are things that can depreciate at a faster speed that you can take 100% of the depreciation upfront. So maybe a parking lot, it may be things that you replace. If you buy something and you've got to go spend, $500,000 in capex to fix something or build something, that you can take that as a tax write-off at 100% in that year. Now, there are some caveats to it, whether you're a real estate professional or not a real estate professional, whether you've got K1 income or other earned business income that you can write it off against. And then there are certain facets where, if you're a W-2 employee and your spouse is a real estate professional, then you could take that loss or that depreciation against your W-2, but it would have to be from a spouse that's a real estate professional. But it's a great way to defer taxable income and maybe never pay tax on it, because you can use a 1031 at least currently, and time costs of money, right? If you're not paying tax or you diminish your tax, your capital grows much faster than post tax if you're paying 37, 39, 51% in the state of California, and then you're trying to deploy that capital afterwards. If you can use pre-tax dollars, it definitely grows at a much faster clip.
Yeah, and having access to the money right now so you can utilize it for other purposes, other investment opportunities, versus, deferring it way out into the future by not taking that immediate capital gain.
And I like mailbox money. I want to continue to build my life where eventually all I have to do is get up and walk to the proverbial mailbox. Um, that's been my goal for 15 years, and that's what we've been highly focused on.
You didn't mention Bitcoin. Did you get out of all your crypto?
Nope, I sold and rebought at the end of last year. That was a good tax loophole as well, that I could take my losses, apply it to my 2022 taxes, and then I rebought right back in.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
been nice.
holding on.
24,000 today. You saw
I
that.
know. I saw a big move, 8% up today. That was, I didn't have an opportunity to take a look at. By the way, I introduced Robert Breedlove to Barry Habib. And yesterday, they recorded an episode of Robert's podcast, the What is Money podcast, where Barry's his guest. So I'm super interested to listen to that when it comes out, because two super smart guys just riffing on money and all of the stuff that's going on right now in the world economically. So I want to go inward a little bit with you on something here. So I I've seen such an amazing transformation in you over the last, say, 5 years or so on a personal level. Like I would actually be really curious to look at like a prior disc assessment of you versus now, because I have a feeling that there's some movement in
It
your
changed.
eye.
Yeah.
Have you done it?
I did. I did one about 6 months ago.
And your eye went up a lot, didn't it?
My I went up, my D went down.
So cool, dude. I mean, it's very noticeable to me. So, like, I'm wondering if there was some intentionality behind that, because I remember the conversation that we had. I think it was in Washington, D.C. at dinner. We were talking about a variety of different things, and you had shared with me that you, in environments like this, in these types of like social environments, you were describing that when you're with your friends, you're like a different version of yourself. You're extroverted and you're social and all that. But when you get in the environment of the L360 group, that you were finding yourself closing down and constricting and not being as connected as you normally are in the world. So we never really circled back to that. I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but then I just witnessed you, especially over the last 3 years or so, 4 years, whatever it's been, like you're a different guy. Like, what happened and what does it feel like? And was there some intention behind it? I think it's important information.
Yeah, I think over the last 7 years, as things shifted in the business and I moved to Cardinal, I went back to that technician. That went back to that comfortable place of putting myself in every situation to try to solve people's problems. I forgot about some of my leadership principles, and I just started taking on more and more and more within our business, within our division. And it was in Laguna. We were sitting there out on this balcony, and it was beautiful, right? It was the beginning of COVID, the first time we like engaged with anybody, all socially distanced, but it was a beautiful view. And I was so focused in on my cell phone and what was coming in. That's what I was thinking about. And so I felt that I would pull out of the mastermind at times. I was checked out mentally because I was so afraid of what was going on. And I realized that's not the experience I wanted, and became very intentional about changing that and putting the right people in place, um, building my group, and just bringing in the best servant leaders that I could find that would shepherd the business the same way that I would have done it, and then hand those things off to them and let them run. And so over the last 4 years, we've built an amazing bench and group that are all cut from the same cloth. They have taken the burden of so much of the stuff that we were doing on a day-to-day basis, that they were better equipped and more knowledgeable, and had more specific knowledge maybe in some of these places, and they've owned each one of their lanes, and it's allowed us to really be able to capitalize and grow the business. It allowed me to reflect, look at my upper limits and my limiting beliefs, and why I did some of the things that I did, or why I was doing the things that I had done, what that false belief was, and then really changing that, and I could change the energy behind it. Again, those are things that you've taught us, that I just gave myself the space to apply, and then I started having the real experience that I intended. That's manifested into us being able to travel and do the things that we never did. I mean, last year was 46 days I spent out of the country. It didn't mean I checked out. I had 2 weeks that we did when we went to Italy. It's the first time I've checked out for a week or more, completely checked out. We change our location, change our environment. I spend some time working on the business, like get my head on straight, put my oxygen mask on myself, and then I can put it on other people. But it really did, as I changed the experience that I intended to have, the law of the universe brought it to me.
I'd imagine that, I mean, that was the retreat as well that Jesse Itzler was with us. I would imagine there had to have been some things that he had said at that retreat that had a huge impact on what you just described, especially like, his juxtaposition of time and the bus ride and all of these things. And that was an incredibly impactful retreat for all of us. And you were not just thinking about your business, because you were fucking thinking about like how to make the best margarita that I've ever had. I mean, dude, you crushed it at that retreat with those margaritas you were making. And everybody was talking about it. I remember walking into that room you were making them in, you had like celery and all kinds of stuff you were putting in there. I'm like, what is he doing? And man, it was good. What was in that margarita? Do you remember? Oranges, lemons.
Yeah, orange, lime, mint, cucumber, and then
Cucumber, not celery.
Yeah,
Okay.
cucumber, and then you got reposado, tequila, Grand Marnier, a little orange juice, some soda water. That's the way I express love. I mean, I'm a bartender at heart still. I know where I came from. I love making margaritas for people. I love, if I'm cooking, like I want to just pour my heart into it to just make it taste amazing. And so margaritas has been something that I've done for a long time. And I want it to be perfect for someone tasting. They're like, man, this is a great margarita, the best margarita I ever had. Because it's just, again, a way I can express love.
I was telling Liz this weekend, we were talking about cooking, because I don't know if you know this about me, but I can hang in the kitchen. I'm a pretty decent cook, and I love to cook. And I was telling her, I was like, it's one of the activities I believe that is a true win-win. Like, in the sense that, like, if like, there's definitely a win on my side if I'm cooking. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I definitely enjoy watching someone eat the food that I made and thank me and go, this is absolutely unbelievable. This is incredible, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's a good feeling. So I'm winning for sure. So there's a selfishness, if you will, in the process of creating something for someone to enjoy, but they're also winning too. So I don't see anything wrong with that formula, because they're eating something that they're really enjoying. So it's like a really nice, reciprocal relationship that's happening, to draw back to reciprocity when you're the person who's creating something. Now, if anybody doesn't like my food, that fucks up the formula, then I'm not winning, and I think they are. So that could get a little bit tricky. What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database, and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one 1-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show. I want to go back to something you said, though, about, so you are putting some puzzle pieces together here. So you had the 8 spec homes. I remember that in DC when you got up and talked about that at the retreat, and how you just were putting your foot down that like you'd overcomplicated your life. And then you were on the rooftop in Laguna post-COVID. We all know that COVID was a crazy year. So you had your mind on a lot of things, and you're like, this isn't the experience that I'm wanting to have. And what I'm witnessing in you is that you are connecting with people more. Like, when you're with us on retreat now, I see you as being so much more connected to everybody. And what I want to offer, and just see if you agree with this, is that what I find is that when I can slow my mind down, and a part of that equation is not having too many things to have to think about, to your passive income statement and all this. But when I can get my mind to slow down a little, like I can when I go to Costa Rica, like it takes about 2 days, In fact, in Costa Rica, they call it American mode. So the Costa Ricans know that if you have only been here for 48 to 72 hours, you're kind of still in American mode. You're like wanting to like push on people's bumpers when you're driving, you're just in a hurry. And then like Levy told me, she's like, oh yeah, we talk about it all the time. She's like, we'll just go, Tim's still in American mode. It'll change in the next day or two. And then all of a sudden, boom, my mind slows down. I'm not as aggravated. I don't have as many things that I'm trying to remember, think about. And I now have room to connect. I now have room to be totally present, and life gets so much better, man, when you're like connecting with people and laughing and having a good time and hearing them and helping them, and they're doing the same to you. And so it's a really beautiful thing to have watched you go through. And it's very noticeable. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome, and congratulations, because that's, I can imagine that life is better for you than it was, say, 5 years ago because of that.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time always worried about what could happen, and that could be consuming. Always playing out the Rubik's Cube and the worst possible scenario, and prepping for that, and being responsive, and triggered, and constantly looking for things to go wrong or what I could fix. Over the last couple of years, I've changed the story in my head. I know things aren't going to blow up. Things aren't going to go crazy. We've got the team in place. I don't have to make myself feel good about, putting myself in the middle of something that my team would be capable. I don't have to grab it or step in. And so that has freed me up a ton, shutting down all the distractions, focusing on my one thing, one business, helped free up a lot of space, and then pursuing the dreams that we have. I mean, this is a great vehicle for us to earn, but there's so much more than that. We make a living by what we earn. We make a life by what we give, and I think that has changed my perspective on things. Jesse Itzler changed my perspective on things, and focused in on that experience, and traveling, and memories, and spending time with our parents. Man, that was mind blowing when he was talking about it. It's not the years in their life or our life; it's the experiences we have left, and to make every experience memorable. That forever changed me. I mean, I could look at my life, and that trip, that retreat, um, was a pivotal moment in my life, and I was ready for it.
Yeah. And I've noticed, I mean, having become better friends with you over the last several years, I've noticed how much more time you spend with your parents. Like you've ratcheted that up for sure. Like going to the national championship game with your dad and having them come here to California and stay at your house. And I mean, it's cool to see that you're not going to have those regrets that unfortunately some people have. Let's wrap up with a question that, if you could turn the clock back, and I like to ask this question because I think it could give some insights to some other things, and talk to your 18-year-old self, um, pre-copier sales, pre-dropping out of college. What what advice, knowing what you know now, would you give him to live the best possible
Yeah,
life?
I would tell myself to put the whip down. Um, and you and I talked a lot about this because we both had similar experiences, and I think I've been hard on myself. I was hard on myself for a lot of years, and that was it. I would whip myself constantly as to what I expected or what I thought I could be doing, and it was always I could be doing more. And I just I maybe I just didn't love myself enough or give myself a break. Just that it was okay, that I didn't have to 24/7 drive myself so hard. And I would tell myself to put the whip down. That would be a big component of what I would do differently.
Yeah, I think that the whip, I mean, we do have that in common. I remember the first time we talked about this was right after the Costa Rica retreat. We were playing golf when we saw that crazy fucking monkey that tried to attack us. Yeah,
That was
you remember
crazy.
that?
That was
Yeah,
scary.
right?
I
I mean,
thought it was going to attack us.
that thing had the devil in its eyes, man, for sure. But we were talking about it on that round of golf, and we both come from this background, I think, where we're out to prove something to ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Like, so We both have different stories, but that was our driving force. But the problem with that being the driving force, which is another way of saying that, is fear. Like fear that I'm not going to be enough if I don't continually reprove to myself that I am enough. So I'm going to keep resetting the bar. I'm going to keep working hard. And at some point in time, you have this epiphany that like, hey, this formula isn't working anymore. But what is required for that formula to transition is an important word that I keep hearing in listening to you, which is trust, and knowing that it's going to be okay. Like I don't have to grind myself to the bone over and over to be safe. That like it's going to work out. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to stay focused. I'm going to be present and do the things that I know that I'm going to do, but I'm also going to not grind myself down to the bone and trust that it's going to be okay. How do you feel about that as a,
Yeah, I mean, my story, Tim, was, when I dropped out, and Stacey and I first started having success, it happened early. And I was scared to death that was like a month or then a year. That the story in my head was I was going to end up broken a failure, and that this was all going to evaporate because I wasn't worthy of it, because I didn't have the degree or the pedigree or whatever else that, being the youngest of three boys, I felt like I had to prove myself to get noticed, right, and to be able to stand up to my brothers. And that was the overwhelming story, was that I was going to end up broken failure. And it took me a long time, years to change that script, to know that that was that was not the truth. And probably the furthest thing from the truth, that I was blessed and I built a skill set and a discipline that, would, make sure that that wasn't the case. And now I'm very far from that belief. Now this market, as tough as it is, I haven't had the level of stress that, I've even had in good years, because I know how the story's going to end, and the season's about to change.
You don't have to believe everything that you think, brother. That's just the bottom line. We got a lot of thoughts that run through our consciousness. Actually, the Gay Hendricks episode just aired today in the 360 Experience. So it's like front and center with the upper limit belief conversation, and you identifying those beliefs and realizing, hey, I don't have to believe that I have to work so hard to be noticed. I mean, that's such a powerful subconscious belief that was running. And look at the freedom that you've had as a result of letting that go. I mean, being able to go to Italy for 2 weeks and not check in for a week, those types of things. So I'm super happy for you, bro. Thank you so much for the gift of your presence in this conversation and for all that you brought in the way of wisdom. I think I counted you had like 19 quotes. So that's the over under was 21. So I lost. I bet the over, but it was awesome to hang with you, bro. I'm sure that we'll do this again.
Looking forward to it, man. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast, and thanks for, the years of friendship and coaching. You're amazing. Thanks for what you do for our industry and for everybody in our group. It's been a real blessing, Tim.
You got it, brother. Appreciate you, man. Very much.
See you in a couple of weeks. Well, I'll see you in a week or so, and we'll get the margarita and get on the bikes and go enjoy the beach.
Yeah, let me know the dates. Early March, right?
Yep, early March.
Looking forward to it, brother. Say hi to Stacey.
All right, my man. See ya. Thanks.